Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of lessons 3.1 and 3.2, lines, angles, and transversals. So in this part, we're actually looking specifically at lesson 3.2, and we have these theorems that come up. This is the corresponding angles theorem. If parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. Notice it's named after the type of angles you're looking at. Okay. The next theorem is the alternate interior angles theorem. It says if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are, you guessed it, congruent. The alternate exterior angles theorem says if, again, parallel lines, and it's really important to know it's parallel lines, are cut by a transversal, then alternate exterior angles are also congruent. And the final theorem is the same side interior angles theorem. This says if parallel lines, again parallel, are cut by a transversal, then same side interior angles are, this is the different one, supplementary. Now, the way I remember it is with alliteration. Same side supplementary. They're all S words. Okay, so that helps me remember that same side are supplementary. Everything else is congruent. Okay, so let's take a look at an example where we have to apply one of these theorems. In example 1, in part A, we're asked to find the measure of angle ABC. Angle ABC is right here, A to B to C. So that's this X degrees right here. So to find that measurement, the first thing we do is we identify how this angle relates to the other measured angle given here. So we start off by saying, what kind of angles are they? And they are corresponding angles. Then we ask ourselves what we know about corresponding angles, and the corresponding angles postulate says that corresponding angles are congruent. And finally, we're going to make an equation. I'm going to say X equals 80, and X represents angle ABC. So I write that the measure of angle ABC is 80 degrees. Okay, now it's important to always write the equation that these two things are equal, because sometimes we have to solve for the variable first. And that's what's going to happen in our next part of example 1. In example 1, part B, they ask you to find the measure of angle DEF in this picture over here. And angle DEF is right here, D to E to F. This is the measure of angle DEF, but they want an actual number. So step 1 is always identify the type of angles we have. This angle and this angle are corresponding. And remember, the corresponding angles postulate says that corresponding angles are congruent. So next, you should write and solve an equation to find out what X is. So try and do that. Pause the video, try and do that, and then press play to check your answer. So what I did is I said 2x minus 45 equals x plus 30, because these are corresponding angles and they're congruent or equal. So I'm going to subtract x on both sides. Then I added 45 on both sides, and I found out that x is 75. Now, it's very, very, very tempting to say that you're done, but you're not, because they didn't ask what is x, they asked what's DEF. So I have to take my 75 and put it in to the expression for DEF. So I get the measure of angle DEF equals 75 plus 30, which is 105 degrees. So that's the answer to this one. Now you have a check it out question coming up next. In check it out number 1, they wanted the measure of angle QRS, which is this angle right here. Now be careful about that. Think carefully. QRS is right here. Look at where those angles are. Think it through. Remember, you have a straight line here. Okay, so try that. Put it on your classwork for today, and don't forget to submit that classwork later. There's another check it out question coming later, so don't do it now. In example 2a, you're asked to find the measure of angle EDF. So that's where this X is right here. So go through the steps. Figure out what kind of angle it is and how it compares to this one. So So figure that out. Then decide what's supposed to be true about them. Pick a theorem to use. And finally, see if you can figure out what x equals. Then press play and check what you thought about. Okay, so these two angles that are given are alternate exterior angles, and alternate exterior angles are congruent. So I know that x is equal to 125, so the measure of angle EDF is equal to 125 degrees. So let's take a look at part B of this. In part B, we have to make an equation. In example 2, we needed to find the measure of angle TUS. So this is the 23x angle. So decide what type of angles they are and what's true about those types of angles. And then see if you can write the equation that's going to help us solve this. Then press play to check your answer. Okay, these are same side interior angles, and same side interior angles are supplementary. So supplementary means that if I add these two angle measures together, I get 180. And this is why it's so important to always go through these first two steps, because guess what? If inevitably same side interior angles comes up and people write 13x equals 23x, and then they have trouble solving it, and then they say, well, it was too hard. But really, they just didn't go through the steps. What kind of angles are they? What do you know about them? Then write an equation. Okay, so this is the equation to solve. See if you can figure out what x is, and then don't forget to put it in and find angle TUS. So I added 13x plus 23x to get 36x. I divided by 36 on both sides to get x is 5. Now that I know that x is 5, I can figure out what 23 times 5 is. So the measure of angle TUS is 23 times 5, or 115 degrees. You have another check it out question coming up next. In check it out number 2, they wanted the measure of angle ABD. Now the 2x plus 10 refers to angle ABD, and the 3x minus 15 refers to angle BDE. I know this diagram isn't the best because they made this really big and it's like, well, what's it pointing to? The 3x minus 15 is this angle here. The 2x plus 10 is this angle here. So do that on your response sheet, and then we have one more example to look at. Example 3 is specifically for our honor students, but everyone should watch this. It says the treble strings of a grand piano are parallel. Viewed from above, the bass strings form transversals to the treble strings. Find x and y in the diagram. Notice our treble strings are in green, our bass strings are in blue. And the interesting thing is that we have 3 parallel lines. But don't worry, we can just ignore the line that we don't need at any given time. So for these top measurements, I'm going to ignore this middle green line because it's not touching either of them. I'm just going to look at this angle here and this angle over here. And I realize that one is above the transversal line and one's below it. So they're alternate angles, and they are not between the parallel green lines. So they're alternate exterior angles, which means that they are congruent. Now I'm going to do the same thing for these other 2 angles. I can ignore this green line at the end here, and I see that this 120 and this 25x plus 4y are both below a transversal and to the right of the green lines. That means they're corresponding angles because they're in the same general position. So I'm going to write that corresponding angles are congruent, and 25x plus 4y has to equal 120. So this is what I get. My equations look like this. Now, you may not remember chapter 6 of Algebra 1, but in that chapter you would have learned the many methods for solving systems of equations. That's what you have here. Personally, I think this is set up perfectly for elimination. Remember, elimination, you line up your x terms, you line up your y's, line up the equal signs, and line up the plain numbers. And then you basically just subtract the 2 equations. And what should happen, if you've done it right, is that one of the variables is going to cancel itself out, and you'll just be left with the single variable. So I'll show you how that works to figure out the value for y. So I just subtracted, and I got 5y minus 4y is y, and 125 minus 120 is 5. Now, it's not always as easy as that. Sometimes you do have to multiply in a number, but this one was pretty easy. I got y is 5. Now, the next thing I need to do is find out what x is, so I can take this y and put it into either of my two equations and solve for x. So watch how I did that. So I did 25x plus 5 times 5 equals 125. I used the top equation, but you could have used the bottom one and it would still work. 5 times 5 is 25, and I subtracted that on both sides. Then I divided by 25 on both sides, and I found out that x is 4. Now, honors people, make sure you study this. I promise you'll be seeing it again. Not honors people, you'll probably just see it on your homework. So that's it for this video lesson. Make sure you let me know if you have any questions about anything here, and don't forget to submit your response questions.